this is Ellery Marshall, a banjo player in Brooklyn, and yeah. So how old were you when you started playing music?
When I started playing music, probably 5 years old, I was playing the drums and playing a little bit of guitar with no specific genre in mind.
So who introduced you to bluegrass?
Well, my dad, I grew up around my dad playing bluegrass. He's been a professional bluegrass musician all of my life and most of his. And I always I never really understood it, and I never really liked it very much growing up. And especially when I was in high school, I was more listening to jazz and some rock, and I always thought it was pretty dorky.
Mm-hmm.
But that changed, obviously.
So you play the banjo.
I play banjo.
How did you start playing the banjo?
Well, it's a long story. You want the whole thing?
Yes.
As I mentioned, I'm a drummer, and I actually moved to New York to study jazz at the New School. They have a jazz program. And I guess the year that I started playing was 2006. I had already been living in New York for a year, and I had just dropped out of college because I decided a jazz education was not something I wanted to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention how expensive it is.
Yeah.
My dad used to hire me to run live sound at his shows. My dad plays in a number of bands, but his main band is called Billy Hill and the Hillbillies, and
That's pretty funny.
It's pretty.
That's clever.
It's a pretty good name.
Yeah.
Anyway, they dress up in overalls, and the running gag in the show is that they're all brothers and they're all named Billy.
Okay.
Anyway, I learned a thing or two about how to run sound for their show. Their show is entirely wireless, so that they can run around and be silly in the crowd. So they need a sound guy who knows their show. Anyway, so I flew out to Seattle to to do sound for the Washington State Fair. They had a gig there, and my dad had just bought a Deering Goodtime cheap travel banjo because he wanted to learn, and I just picked it up in the hotel room and just started plinking around on it, and I learned banjo in the hollow. He showed me banjo in the hollow. It's pretty much next to Cripple Creek. That's the beginner banjo tune.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned it that night, and I guess that was impressive. It didn't feel like an accomplishment, but so I ended up taking the banjo back home with me, and that's where it started. And I think I was 20 years old when I started playing banjo.
Okay. So, what drew you to why did you stay in New York City to play bluegrass?
I don't think I was on the fence about staying here after I dropped out of college. I didn't actually stay here because of bluegrass. I stayed here because I got a job working in interior design.
Okay.
And I was making a lot of money, and that's what kept me here for several years. Although I did notice right away that there was a surprisingly big country and bluegrass scene here. There still is.
Yeah. So how long have you been playing bluegrass here?
Since I think I wasn't very serious with the banjo the first year, so I got really serious about practicing in 2007, and then I was comfortable enough to play with people in maybe 2008 or 2009. And so since then I've been playing, been interested in bluegrass and banjo since then. So what is that? 12 years? Yeah.
12 years, yeah. Have you seen this scene in New York City evolve, like in bluegrass, since you've been playing?
Oh yeah, it ebbs and flows because people move here for whatever reason after college, or they have significant others who have jobs here, and there have been high and low points, but there was, this last major influx had a big effect. All the young guys from Berkeley that came out in, I don't know, 2014 or 2013, that was pretty huge.
Yeah. So you said that when you were like a teenager, you thought that bluegrass was kind of dorky.
Yeah, right. Don't tell my dad.
Okay. What changed? What did you like? When did you start liking it, and what did you like about it? What drew you in?
Honestly, it was banjo. I never liked bluegrass that much, but I did become obsessed with the banjo, and as far as 3-finger banjo playing goes, bluegrass is a great vehicle for that style, and so it just sort of fell into it. But also, it did make, being 3,000 miles from home, it did sort of make me feel nostalgic, and still does. Because growing up, I just heard bluegrass all the time. So I think that's part of what draws me to it.
You're kind of a part of this, but there are a lot of younger people in New York City, at least, playing bluegrass. Why do you think that is? Because in general, in most other states, like you'll go to a jam, and there'll be like a bunch of 50-year-olds or something. But here, like at Mona's and stuff, there are like a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds.
I think there's a few reasons for that. I think mainly it's just because the people who live in Brooklyn and go out late at night to Mona's are young people, you know? Or people are also the kind of people that are roughing it and trying to make a go of living in New York, especially making a living. They tend to be younger people. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but also it's, as far as the bluegrass scene, there's a lot of, it's a natural place to go after college, so it's a lot of college aged people.
Okay. Here's the hard question.
Okay.
If you could describe bluegrass in one word or phrase, what would it be?
Probably community. That's the thing that I value the most about the bluegrass scene, and not just this scene, but everywhere I go, especially compared to like the way the jazz scene is. It's people can be very cold in jazz, because this is sort of like the jazz mecca of the world. This is where people come to study jazz and be the best. And having been part of that scene in college, I can tell you, there's a lot. It's very competitive. It's intimidating, and I don't feel that in bluegrass. People are very welcoming. you know, I got into the scene by going to Sheriff Bob's. I don't know where I read. I think I read about it on somebody. I can't remember who. Maybe it was Brad Klein or something. Used to keep a calendar of all the bluegrass related events in New York, and I found that calendar online, and I found Sheriff Bob's Jam, which used to be at a bar called the Bagot Inn,
Yeah.
which is now the Zinc Bar.
So it's still in the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went there and discovered this amazing community.
When was that?
Well, I know exactly when it was because I remember I needed a fake ID to get in there.
Ah.
I went in once and got thrown out after playing a few songs.
Because you were underage?
Because I was underage, and the bouncer told me not to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I went home for Christmas or something. I went back to LA, and I went to great lengths to get a fake ID, which ended up being a horrible fake. And I went, it was when I was back in New York, I went, and it got me into the Bagot at least a few times, if not several times. And then the bouncer ended up doing that thing of bending the ID to see if it was real, and it just broke in half, and so then he threw me out again. And then, but by that time, I was already almost 21, so.
Ah. Yeah, that's the problem in New York.
Wait, so what was the question? I'm sorry. When you asked me.
If you could describe it in one word.
No. After that, you asked me
What's the question?
what year I started.
Oh yeah, what year did you start?
Yeah, so that would have been, if I was 20, that would have been 2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess a long time ago, I don't know, but you started something called the Brooklyn Bluegrass Collective.
I didn't actually start it, but I was
part of it.
there when they dreamed the idea. Yeah, it's just, the idea is, as far as I know, is to have, to showcase the New York scene by putting all sorts of different lineups together and working out tunes and filming it, and there's tons of stuff online. I think they have a couple videos that I'm in from, it must have been 2014, that have like a ton of views, like 60 or 70 or 80,000 views. I don't know.
I know, I've seen them.
I don't know how they managed that, but so that's cool.
Do you have any standout experiences playing in New York City?
Well, most of my playing experience has been in New York City.
Okay.
I had the great opportunity to play in Andy Statman's band for about 2 years, which was a learning experience. And just getting to know him and picking his brain was a really great experience for me, and I definitely learned how to play faster with him, because he likes to play insanely fast tempos, and so I taught myself to abbreviate certain things so that I could play them at faster and faster speeds.
Yeah. So the scene in New York City, like as you said, a huge part of it is the community. Why do you think that the community has a major effect of how the music here goes?
Well, yeah. You'll notice it when you visit other places, other scenes. The repertory changes, like regionally.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Anytime somebody from out of town comes to Mona's, I noticed that they're surprised that there's all these tunes that they're not used to playing.
Yeah.
And the same thing when I visited, I went to a jam in Asheville once, and I didn't know a lot of the songs they were calling.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like old time fiddle tunes that people know out there, and then in LA where I'm from, there's a few jam sessions, regular jam sessions, and they have their whole repertory of songs that they do. So that's one way that the city sort of influences the sound. But I mean, the people that moved, a lot of the great musicians that moved here, they come here because there's so much other music in New York.
Mm-hmm.
There's, I have friends who play choro music, who play jazz, who play klezmer, and there's a great scene for all those things here. So, and that seeps into the music, the bluegrass. Definitely. I mean, I just made a jazz record, and I couldn't have done it without musicians that know, jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So as you just said, you made a CD, Marshall and Monk. Why did you decide to make that? How did you?
I'm a huge fan of old jazz, especially Monk, and there's something about the Thelonious Monk and his tunes, especially the ones that aren't they don't have a lot of chromatic movement. They're just so catchy, and I figured I'd try seeing how it translates on banjo. So the song "Gentle on My Mind."
Yes.
So it goes from let's say we're in the key of D. It goes to the 2 minor chord after that, and it sits on and has this. Right?
Yeah.
This sort of scalar walk down over the E minor.
Right.
So I realized when I don't know who I was playing that with, but it sounded a lot like one of my favorite Monk tunes, "In Walked Bud."
Yeah.
So I just decided to turn that into banjo rolls. Again. And so on. So that just started the whole thing, and then I started arranging other Monk songs that I liked, and Jason Borisov helped me figure out how to change the chords to make them sound more bluegrassy.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of just rewrote the chords, which some people, especially dedicated jazz purists, are not
Thrilled about.
They're not thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But it really helped it sound more like bluegrass, because that's, harmonically that's what bluegrass is. It's a lot simpler. So.
Hey, you also play in a newer group called Ham Radio.
Yeah, and I'm trying to bring my drumming back via this country band, old school country band. It's fun.
Yeah. So how did that group start?
Me and Justin. I think. Well, no, that's not true. Justin had already started a country band with Larry and Christian, and I think they were. I don't know who. I think maybe Zach was playing drums. Zach Bruce.
Okay.
And I don't know. I just started doing it here and there, and then we finally started having weekly rehearsals. So it turned into a real band.
Cool.
And it feels good to play drums again.
So, what would you say draws you to bluegrass now? Or keeps you in the scene?
I don't consider myself to be through learning even the basics. Every time I listen to Earl Scruggs, I realize there's something I didn't know, and I'm pretty content just studying that and trying to master it. And I think, as long as there's stuff to inspire me like that, I think I'm gonna stay pretty interested in it. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
All right, it was fun. Bye.